Hello, welcome to another Writing Essential Tools. Essential Writing Tools. Hello, welcome to another Essential Writing Tools. My name is Jonathan, and today we're going to talk a little bit about endings. From the moment that you finished your first book, you know that stories have endings. It's pretty obvious, right? From an elven ship carrying a hobbit away off into the distance, to the hero that ends up slaying the dragon and rescuing the princess. Real life may not be so perfect, however. What if the ship sprung a leak? Or what if, when the townspeople gathered the dragon's corpse and then burned it in celebration, released a plague upon the land? This also happens in my book, Knights Without Kings, so if you're interested in reading any of that, link down below, okay? Paperback and Kindle version are both available, and remember to forget the inside look feature, because that feature is screwed up, and I'm still working on that, but it is not at all representative of the actual paperback or Kindle version, so, yeah, shameless plug. The point is, readers want closure. And the burden is on us, the writers, to make that ending satisfying. In Knights Without Kings, I knew the ending would involve a demon possession. The whole twist is that it isn't a demon that is being possessed, but a human soul that is possessing a demon. That's kind of the twist that I wanted to write to. So I wrote from an outline, and steadily, plot point by plot point, I was making my way to that end. The problem is, once I got there, I wasn't satisfied with that ending. It was only 17 chapters up to that point, which was roughly, I think at that point, maybe 350 pages. And it just wasn't the conclusion that I wanted. So instead, I wrote another outline point further along and wrote to that. And I'm glad I did, because the story ended up being a little bit more robust. I developed the characters after this said possession, and even the characters involved in the possession, and which it's still not done yet. There's still a lot more character development that will happen in the second and third books, mainly the third book, though. Of that plot point. So to write good endings, you must read them. The Crown Tower, which I'm considering writing a review for, stay tuned for it, sets the world up in its first chapter, as it should. But seeing as the ending has everything to do with the events taking place there in chapter 1, they complement each other well. It's a prequel, but you can't tell, and it's not a bad thing. It's not burdened by the world building. It has just enough, and the story is purposefully fluid to the end. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. Another example of a great ending is Artyom's Voyage in Metro 2033. Metro 2033, written by Dmitry Glukhovsky, is made more horrifying as chapter by chapter you realize the horrors and the dark and evil monsters lurking in the tunnels of the vast and sprawling Metro. If you're writing horror, I highly recommend Metro 2033 because it is a must-read. It really is very eerie, and it creates this atmosphere of fear and darkness that is very difficult to capture otherwise, so I highly recommend it there. There are multiple ways to end a book, and Mr. Roy Clark, the author of Writing Essential Tools that this series is based on, also link in the description if you're interested in buying that for yourself. I highly recommend it for any aspiring writers. Mr. Roy Clark offers a few examples. Closing the circle. Now, this ending reminds us of a place at the beginning by returning to it. So kind of the hero returning back to the village where he or she originally started, and the differences in the character are marked by the place being exactly the same or maybe even different. That you can play around with that mechanic a little bit, but that's one way closing the circle works. Then you have the time frame. The writer creates a tick-tock mechanic which has time advancing relentlessly to the end. The writer is the one who decides what should happen last. Then you have the payoff. The longer the story, the more important the payoff. This does not require necessarily a happy ending, but it does require a satisfying one. A reward for a journey concluded, a mystery solved, a secret revealed. Then you have the epilogue. The story ends, but life goes on. Now, I don't like epilogues too much. I believe the story should begin where it begins and end where it ends, but I'm more okay with epilogues than I am with prologues. An epilogue helps readers satisfy their curiosity after the story ends. So in this regard, it's acceptable. Because, and even in some cases where I was so heavily invested with a character throughout his journey, I want to know if it ended up all right or not. Then you have the apt quote. Some characters speak in endings, capturing in a few words a distillation of what happened before, or maybe even a little summary of what's going to happen next. Usually the writer can write it better than the character can say it. So remember, there is a little caveat to the apt quote. Just something to keep in mind. Mr. Roy Clark ends this section with a warning. Don't let your ending drone on and on. Though some authors can get away with writing like this, especially the more talented ones, most writers cannot, and it is painfully obvious. Get a handle on your ending. Ask yourself, what would happen if I just ended the story right here? move it another paragraph after that, and then say, is this where the ending feels right? Or move it a paragraph back and say, maybe I should end it a little bit earlier. Try these for yourself before you send it to your betas, just to see. And if your betas tell you, hey, you need to go a little bit further because the ending was not satisfying enough, listen to their feedback. If you don't know what a beta reader is, essentially a beta reader is someone who reads your book for free, usually a friend or family, and they give you, or they're supposed to give you, constructive advice. They'll critique your work. And this is more towards the latter end of your writing process, but at the very early stages of the publishing process. So these are just a few examples of how to write endings, and I hope you've added them to your toolbox. Now, maybe there's some that I missed here that you think should be included. If so, what would they be? Leave me in the comments below. Leave me some suggestions that I can maybe think about, or even, should include in some other video in the future. As for today's workshop, I suggest that you read stories. Obviously, the best writer is a good reader. So read, read, and read. But don't just do that. Listen to music too. Listen to the way sometimes music can influence a writer's writings. The way a certain song ends might influence you to end a story in a certain way. That's entirely subjective, and I can't tell you how to do that one. But pay attention to the way music ends. Pay attention to the way movies end. If they cut off abruptly, or if they are drawn on and on and on, how they do that. Maybe it'll be of a little help to you. Pay close attention to the details and themes that bear fruit early for the benefit of the end. And as a final note, this writing series is based on the writing tools by Mr. Roy Peter Clark. And there's going to be a link in the description. I'm taking all of the lessons of these writing tools advice, I guess, from this book. So if you want to get ahead of this series, purchase the books. Link, again, going to be down below. Or just keep, watching these videos for the tools that'll help you write. So thank you for tuning in. And if you like this, you will probably also like my Facebook page. I put videos up like this too, but I also put extra things, like some things that I'm working on, like writing at the time, or just little thoughts that come into my head. Go to my Facebook, and the link is in the description. Just give a like and subscribe to this channel as well for updates and continuing videos on writing. Well, thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one, okay? Take it easy and be safe out there, People are pretty crazy. So, bye.
What you have never seen before, but deep inside you know there must be more. I heard a voice, but I could not follow.